In this video, we're going to dive into Canvas, a powerful new tool built right into Showbie. If you aren't familiar yet, Canvas is a dynamic, creative workspace. Think about it like having an interactive digital whiteboard that lives right inside your assignments. To create a canvas, head into Materials on any assignment, tap the plus icon and pick Canvas from the list. Straight away you'll get a new, untitled canvas at the top of your materials, ready to open. And just like anything else that you create in Showbie, you can choose who you want to share this with. If I'm creating a canvas as a resource before the lesson starts, I would generally switch this to teachers only to begin with, and then I can make it available to my students when the lesson begins. Or you might want to make a canvas just for a particular group of students, or the whole class at once. You can choose whatever works best for you. Okay, now let's get on to the fun stuff and open up our new canvas. Immediately, you'll notice these little grey dots on the screen. These show you how far zoomed in you are into the canvas, and I'd suggest that you always start work at this scale. One of the really clever parts of Canvas is that you can actually zoom really far in and work as normal, and then zoom out to move to another part of the board to keep working. This expandable space gives you plenty of room to get really creative, and you can always resize your content too if you need more space. Just to give you an idea of the size, let me quickly drop a shape on here, and then we'll zoom right the way out by pinching the screen. And yep, that should be enough space to work on, I reckon. Before we get any further into the video, let me just quickly jump into a slightly more interesting canvas that I've been working on. There's a lot more to look at. Oh, that's better. The document editing tools have had a real glow up in the canvas, but don't worry, they're just as easy to use as before. When I select a tool, I can now change options such as the size and colour using the sidebar on the left, which is also where I can toggle between similar tools. For example, if I select the pencil, I can then swap to the highlighter and the eraser from that sidebar. Selecting the shape tool from the top toolbar lets me choose from multiple shapes on the sidebar, as well as being able to change the outline and the fill colours to get exactly what I wanted. And speaking of shapes, I really like the built-in arrows for drawing attention to different parts of the canvas, and also this zigzag line tool is great for quickly and neatly drawing custom geometric shapes to help organise my canvas. While we're looking at the sidebar here, I've got a little pro tip for you. You can easily move this sidebar to the other side of the screen if you'd rather, just by dragging the little move handle here. Now, let's talk about images, because for me, this is where Canvas can really come alive. You see, you can take a photo of your camera, or you can select an existing image from the photo library, and then crop it to the part you want before placing it in Canvas. Once on the page, you can then resize and reposition just as you'd expect. This immediately opens up some really powerful use cases, such as dropping in a screenshot of an activity for your students to annotate, or perhaps getting your students to add their own images into tables and Venn diagrams that you've set up for them. Once you start thinking about how this could be used, the possibilities really do seem endless. And here's a technique that I use when creating templates for my students to add photos to. I draw a shape to act as a frame, and then add a short instruction with the text tool and pop a camera emoji next to it. That way it's super obvious to students that that's where the photo or image needs to go on the canvas. That might be a frame for a child to photograph a labelled diagram they've drawn on paper, or perhaps you might want to do a practical light-up or a piece of design work that then needs capturing digitally. Or perhaps they're doing some research and you want them to add a screenshot of what they found into a placeholder on the canvas. Another pro tip here. If you want to add multiple images at once, just jump into multitasking mode and bring up Photos and Showbie side by side. Then you can select as many images as you want and simply drag and drop them onto the canvas. If you're using Showbie on the web, you can import multiple pictures just by pressing the import button at the top. Oh, and if you want to bring in a website as a resource to expand on something you're learning about, you can paste a link straight onto Canvas as text. Then, when a student taps on the link, there's a little message saying Open Link, and it will take them straight to that resource. Just like other documents in Showbie, we have access to the Layers panel in the top toolbar here, which lets you toggle on or off different additions to the canvas. This is great for removing your scaffolds or hiding student work whilst modelling an example in front of the class. Another incredibly useful feature is document history. This tool gives you a running list of every action made on that canvas, so if you've drawn over something by mistake, you don't need to undo your way back through everything you've done since. You can just find that one action in the history and delete it directly. That means you can easily go back and remove your later annotations before sharing the canvas with the rest of your students. Right next to document history is the screen recording tool, which is built straight into Canvas on iPad. Tap the record icon, And as long as your microphone and camera permissions are switched on, it'll bring up the same recording tools you're familiar with already in Showbie. Your recording starts the moment you hit that red button on the toolbar. Now I'm free to model this equation on screen in order to create a short learning aid for some of my students. When I tap Save, it'll automatically upload straight into the materials feed for the assignment you're working on, but crucially, it's set by default to be viewed by teachers only. This gives me the opportunity to review the video before anyone else sees it, and then I can share it exactly like any other post, to a student who is away and needs a recap of the lesson, to a group of learners who perhaps might benefit from additional resources, or I can unlock it for the whole class later as a revision resource. You can even open an individual student's own canvas and record a personalised explainer directly on their work, marking up exactly where they made a mistake and talking them through solving it, and send it just to them. We know just how important personalised in-the-moment feedback like this is, and having it built directly into Canvas makes that process easier than ever before. It's worth quickly recapping the live nature of Canvas because it's so useful in the classroom. The moment you create one in materials, it appears in every student's assignment too. They watch your annotations appear as you teach in real time, whilst being able to add their own notes and workings out on a different layer from your content. That means that nothing they do will disturb your original materials, and they can follow along with your lesson from the iPad or the screen at the front of class. And remember, anything that you as the teacher place on Canvas, the students can't move, but anything they add themselves is entirely theirs to reposition and edit. And if you go back into a Canvas later and add something new, perhaps a new column to a tracker your class have been using, it will update on every single one of the students' copies of Canvas too, because you're always working on the master version. It's also worth knowing that Canvas isn't just a direct instruction tool where you lead and students watch. It works just as well as an independent practice space. Build a template with, say, a Venn diagram with some headings already in place, share it out, and your students can work through it entirely on their own copy of the canvas, using text, using images, whatever they'd like. And of course they can do this in the classroom or at home as home learning, working at their own pace, exactly like they would do with any other document in Showbie. And so finally, let's step back and look at the larger uses of Canvas beyond just one single lesson. An individual canvas can easily become a resource which you and your students revisit lesson after lesson, adding to it as the learning develops. Maybe it becomes a revision aid where students add all of their topic notes into one place, ready to revisit at the end of the term. Perhaps you're building out a timeline, a project tracker, a photographic study. The only limit here is your imagination. And don't forget, if it feels like you might run out of space, you can simply select everything and then shrink it down to give you more room to develop your ideas and your studies. So that's an introduction to Canvas, a great new tool for direct instruction and modelling, a powerful way for students to engage in interactive learning activities, and a superb way of compiling together lots of information and notes to revisit in the future. Give Canvas a try in your next lesson and see where it fits in for you.